The silence of deep space was broken by a weak signal that traveled through the darkness for months. It passed dead stars and empty worlds, carrying a message that would change everything. In the year 2387, this signal finally reached the hidden human colony of New Geneva. Tucked away in a corner of space where no one thought to look, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiant Dawn, staring at the communication screen with eyes that had seen too much war. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight knot, and her uniform bore the scars of 7 decades in exile. The message that appeared on her screen made her heart skip a beat. The children of Terra call to their lost brothers. The enemy grows bold. The time of hiding ends. Operation Lazarus is authorized. The words came from Earth itself. Earth, the world that the galaxy believed was nothing but ashes and broken cities. Earth, the home that humanity had supposedly lost forever when the Cathara Dominion came with their massive fleets and terrible weapons. Chen remembered that day 73 years ago. She had been young then, just a lieutenant on a patrol ship. The Cathara had arrived without warning, their black ships blotting out the sun. The news report spoke of cities burning and millions dying. Then came the Great Exodus, when the surviving human ships fled into the unknown regions of space. "Ma'am?" Her second-in-command, Captain James Murphy, stood beside her with a worried look. "Is it real?" Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. They were good people, born in space or on colony worlds far from Earth. Many had never seen their ancestral home. To them, Earth was just a story their parents told, a legend of the world where humanity began. "Run every test we have," Chen ordered. "I want to know if this signal is genuine." The crew worked quickly. The Terran remnant fleet had 47 ships hidden in the Void Belt, a dangerous region of space filled with gravity wells and energy storms that made it impossible for most ships to navigate. They had survived here by being careful, by never trusting anything completely. Hours passed before the communications officer looked up. "Admiral, the signal checks out. The encryption codes are authentic. This came from Earth." Chen felt something she had not felt in decades. Hope. Real hope. Not the fake kind she had to show her people to keep them going. Earth was alive. Somehow, impossibly, their homeworld still existed. She walked to the main display and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Throughout the 47 ships of the remnant fleet, humans stopped what they were doing to listen to their admiral. "My friends," Chen began, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "Today we received a message from home." She could hear the gasps and whispers across the communication channel. Home was not supposed to exist anymore. "Earth lives," she continued. "Our world calls to us. After 73 years of exile, after decades of believing we were the last humans in the galaxy, we have learned the truth. We are not alone." The cheers that erupted from 47 ships could have powered a small star. People cried and laughed and held each other. Some fell to their knees. Others danced. For the first time since the Great Exodus, humanity had something more than just survival to hope for. But Chen was not finished. "The message contains coordinates and new orders. We are to rendezvous with Earth Fleet Command, but first we must prepare. The Cathara Dominion has grown strong while we have been in exile. They rule over a third of the galaxy now. They have forgotten that humanity ever existed, except as a footnote in their history books." She paused, thinking of all the worlds the Cathara had conquered, all the species they had enslaved or destroyed. The aliens called themselves the perfect warriors, the ultimate evolution of life in the galaxy. They had divided all other species into 2 groups, those worth enslaving and those worth destroying. They had put humanity in the second group. "The Dominion thinks we are extinct," Chen said. "They celebrate their victory over us every year. On the anniversary of what they call the Great Cleansing, they hold parades on the worlds they stole from us. They display monuments to their triumph over the weak humans." The anger in her voice was matched by the anger she could hear from her crews. They had all lost friends and family to the Cathara. They had all grown up hearing stories of the horrors that followed the invasion. "But they were wrong about us," Chen continued. "They thought they had killed humanity. They thought our spirit was broken. They forgot the most important thing about humans: we never stay down." In the weeks that followed, the remnant fleet prepared for the journey. Their ships were unlike anything that had existed during the Great Exodus. 73 years of survival in the Void Belt had forced them to adapt and innovate. Their vessels now used technology that would have seemed impossible to their ancestors. The ships could slip partially into subspace, making them nearly invisible to sensors. Their weapons combined human engineering with alien technology they had salvaged from derelict ships over the decades. Most importantly, they had learned to fight like humans, smart, unpredictable, and absolutely refusing to give up. As the fleet prepared to leave the void belt, Chen stood alone in her quarters looking at an old photograph of Earth. It showed blue oceans and green continents under white clouds. She had been born on that world, in a city that the Kythera had supposedly burned to ash. "We're coming home," she whispered to the photograph. "And we're not the same people who left." The Kythera Dominion controlled their empire from massive fortress worlds, their war hierarchs ruling over billions of slaves. They had grown comfortable in their power. Their ships patrolled the galaxy enforcing their will, secure in the knowledge that no one could challenge them. They had no idea that in the darkness between the stars humanity was stirring. They did not know that 47 ships filled with humans who had spent 7 decades learning to hate were beginning to move. They could not imagine that Earth itself might still exist hidden and waiting. The signal from home had awakened something in the remnant fleet. It was not just hope or joy or relief. It was something much more dangerous. It was the knowledge that the war was not over, that humanity had never truly been defeated. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when you thought you had destroyed humanity completely. Soon, the Kythera Dominion would discover their greatest mistake. They should have made sure humans were really dead before they started celebrating. The remnant fleet moved through space like shadows, their ships sliding between dimensions in ways that made them invisible to most sensors. Admiral Chen watched from her bridge as the stars changed around them, knowing that they were traveling faster than any Kythera ship could follow. The journey to the rendezvous point would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to cross half the galaxy without being detected by the thousands of Kythera patrol ships that enforced the Dominion's rule. It should have been impossible, but the humans had learned many impossible things during their 73 years in exile. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Davis from the sensor station, "we're picking up a distress signal. Human origin." Chen turned toward the young woman. Davis had been born on New Geneva, had never seen Earth, but she carried the same determination that burned in all the remnant fleet crews. "Put it on speakers." The voice that filled the bridge was weak and scared. "This is Mining Station Echo 7. We are under attack by Kythera forces. They're killing everyone. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." Then came another voice, harsh and cruel, speaking in the clicking language of the Kythera. A translator unit converted the words to English. "Attention, human vermin. You have violated Dominion law by existing in this sector. As punishment, every 10th human will be executed for sport. The others will watch and learn proper respect for your superiors." Chen felt her hands clench into fists. This was what the Kythera called justice. They found groups of human refugees trying to survive in the empty corners of space and used them for target practice. It was their favorite form of entertainment. "Captain Murphy," she said quietly, "how far to that mining station?" 6 hours at maximum speed, ma'am." "But Admiral, our orders are to reach the rendezvous point. If we reveal ourselves now—" "Our orders are to protect humanity," Chen cut him off. "Those are our people down there." She activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have humans under attack. I know our mission is important, but I will not let our people die while we hide in the shadows. Any ship that wants to continue to the rendezvous point may do so. I will not think less of you." The responses came back immediately from all 47 ships. Not one captain wanted to abandon the rescue mission. "Very well," Chen said. "Silent running protocol. We go in dark and hit them hard. Show them what humans have learned about war." The remnant fleet changed course, their ships becoming even more invisible as they activated their stealth systems. They approached the mining station like ghosts, undetected by the Kythera sensors. What they found made Chen's blood boil. 3 Kythera warships, each the size of a city, surrounded the small mining station. They had tractored several human ships and were using them for target practice while the crews were still aboard. On the station itself, hundreds of humans were lined up while Kythera soldiers selected victims for execution. The Kythera were enjoying themselves. They laughed as they fired their weapons, taking bets on which humans would beg for their lives. They had done this thousands of times before on hundreds of worlds. To them, it was just another day of fun. All ships, Chen whispered into her communicator. On my mark, decloak and open fire. No survivors. The space around the mining station suddenly filled with 47 human warships that appeared from nowhere. The Kythera had seconds to realize what was happening before the human weapons opened fire. But these were not the same weapons the Kythera remembered from 73 years ago. These were weapons built by humans who had spent decades learning to hate. Weapons designed by people who understood that sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become something even more dangerous. The first Kythera ship died in under 10 seconds. Human plasma cannons, improved with alien technology, punched through their shields like they were made of paper. The second ship tried to run, but human missiles that could track their targets through subspace caught them before they could escape. The third ship managed to send a distress signal before it too was destroyed. The message was simple: unknown human fleet. Impossible weapons. All ships destroyed. Humans not extinct. Repeat, humans not extinct. Chen watched the Kythera ships break apart and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Rescue teams to the station, medical teams on standby, and send a message to those humans down there. The Earth fleet has returned. The humans on the mining station could not believe what they were seeing. They had lived their entire lives believing that humanity was finished, that the remnant fleet was just a legend told by old people who remembered better times. Now 47 warships hung in space around them, and soldiers in human uniforms were beaming down to help them. Many of the refugees fell to their knees and wept. Others stood in shock. A few grabbed the human soldiers and refused to let them go, afraid they might disappear. "Is it really true?" asked an old man who had managed the mining station. "Is Earth still alive?" The rescue team leader, a young sergeant named Martinez, smiled as he helped wounded civilians. "More than alive, sir. Earth is ready for war." The refugees were brought aboard the human ships where they were fed real food and given clean clothes and medical attention. Many had not seen such kindness in decades. The Kythera permitted human refugees to exist only as long as they were useful, and killed them the moment they became inconvenient. But as the remnant fleet prepared to continue their journey, they knew that their rescue had consequences. The Kythera distress signal had been received across half the galaxy. Soon every war hierarch in the Dominion would know that humans still existed. On the Kythera homeworld, Supreme War Hierarch Thakmor stared at the report with disbelief. Humans with impossible weapons, ships that could appear from nowhere, 3 of his patrol fleets destroyed without inflicting any damage in return. "This is obviously fake," he told his subordinates. "Some other species is using human symbols to confuse us. Humans are extinct. We made sure of that 73 years ago. But over the next few days, more reports came in. Kythera ships were vanishing throughout the outer sectors. Sometimes there were survivors who spoke of ghost ships appearing from empty space. Sometimes there were messages left behind, written in human languages that most Kythera could not read. The messages all said the same thing: "We remember. We are coming." Thakmor began to feel something he had not experienced in decades: fear. Not the simple worry that came with military planning, but real terror at the thought that humanity might still exist. Because if humans were still alive, if they had been hiding and growing stronger for 73 years, then the Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had taught an entire species to hate them. They had given humans decades to plan revenge. "Find them," Thakmor ordered his fleet commanders. "Whatever these things are, find them and destroy them. If even one human ship escapes, it will mean the end of everything we have built." But the Kythera would soon learn that finding the remnant fleet was easier said than done. The humans had become very good at staying hidden, and very good at striking where they were not expected. The galaxy was about to discover what 73 years of exile had taught humanity about war. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, staring at empty space where the coordinates from Earth had led them. According to their sensors, there was nothing here but cosmic dust and radiation from a distant star. No planets, no ships, no signs of life at all. "Are you certain these are the right coordinates?" she asked her navigation officer. "Positive, Admiral. We're exactly where the message told us to go." Chen frowned. They had traveled for weeks to reach this point, fighting Kythera patrols along the way and rescuing human refugees wherever they found them. Word was spreading through the underground networks that the Earth fleet had returned. But if there was no Earth fleet to be found, what did that mean? "Admiral," called Lieutenant Davis from sensors, "I'm detecting a transmission on an old Earth military frequency. Very weak, directed specifically at us. Put it through. A new voice filled the bridge, speaking with the accent of old Earth that Chen remembered from her childhood. Remnant Fleet Vessel Defiant Dawn, this is Earth Fleet Command. Transmit authorization code Lazarus. Chen felt her heart racing. She walked to the communication panel and spoke the code that had been hidden in the original message from Earth. Authorization code Lazarus 77 Alpha. Admiral Sarah Chen commanding. Code confirmed. Admiral Chen, welcome home. Prepare for guided approach. The empty space in front of them began to change. Reality seemed to bend and twist, and suddenly a massive structure appeared where nothing had been before. It was not just a space station or a ship. It was Earth itself, surrounded by a defensive grid of weapon platforms and shield generators that made it look like a fortress floating in space. My God, whispered Captain Murphy. They hid the entire planet. Chen could barely speak. Earth was not the burned wreck the galaxy believed it to be. The continents were green and blue, covered with cities that gleamed in the sunlight. Orbital elevators reached down from space stations the size of small moons. Shipyards stretched across the solar system, filled with vessels that dwarfed anything in the remnant fleet. All remnant ship, came the voice from Earth. Follow the guide beacons to Docking Bay 7. Fleet Admiral Torres is waiting to meet with you. The remnant fleet was guided through the defensive grid, past weapon platforms that could have destroyed entire Cathara battle groups. Chen counted hundreds of human warships in the orbital yards, each one larger and more advanced than anything she had ever seen. When her ship docked, Chen was met by a man who looked to be in his 50s but moved with the energy of someone much younger. He wore the uniform of Earth Fleet Command, with medals and ribbons that spoke of decades of service. Admiral Chen, he said, extending his hand. I'm Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres. Welcome home. Chen shook his hand, still trying to process what she was seeing. Admiral Torres, I thought. We all thought Earth was destroyed. The reports, the Exodus, Torres smiled grimly. That was the plan. Come with me, Admiral. There's a lot you need to know. He led her through corridors filled with humans who looked healthy and well-fed, wearing uniforms she had never seen before. They passed laboratories where scientists worked on technologies that seemed impossible, and war rooms where officers planned operations across star maps that showed the entire galaxy. 73 years ago, Torres began as they walked. We knew the Cathara were coming. Our long-range scouts had been tracking their expansion for months. We also knew we couldn't fight them directly. Their fleets were too large, their technology too advanced. They entered a conference room with windows that looked out on Earth's surface. Chen could see cities and forests, farms and factories. Billions of people lived and worked there, people the galaxy believed were dead. So we made a choice, Torres continued. We would make them think they had won. The Great Exodus was real, but it was only part of the plan. We sent out colony ships filled with volunteers, people who knew they might never see Earth again. We staged battles where we appeared to lose. We even built fake cities for the Cathara to destroy. Chen sat down heavily. You faked the entire invasion? The deaths were real enough, Torres said sadly. We lost millions of people. But while the Cathara were celebrating their victory over fake targets, the real Earth was being hidden. We used experimental cloaking technology to make the planet appear destroyed from the outside. Anyone scanning the system would see nothing but debris and radiation. He activated a holographic display that showed Earth's solar system as it appeared to outside sensors. The planets looked like dead rocks, their surfaces scarred by ancient impacts. There was no sign of the thriving civilization that actually existed here. For 73 years we've been preparing, Torres said. We built this defensive grid. We developed new technologies. We trained new armies and fleets. Most importantly, we waited for the galaxy to forget about us. Chen looked out the window at the orbital shipyards. How many ships do you have? Active fleet strength is currently 837 vessels, with another 300 in construction. But numbers aren't everything. Our ships are generations ahead of anything the Cathara possess. We've had 7 decades to study their technology and develop counters for everything they can do. He showed her video feeds from recent battles where Earth fleet ships had engaged Cathara forces. The human vessels moved like living things, phasing in and out of normal space, firing weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. The Cathara ships were destroyed so quickly they barely had time to return fire. The remnant fleets were always part of the plan, Torres explained. We needed humans out there in the galaxy. surviving and adapting and learning to hate the Kythera. You and the other exile fleets have become our advance forces, our eyes and ears throughout Dominion space. Other exile fleets? Chen asked. There are currently 17 separate remnant groups operating in different sectors of the galaxy. Each one believes they are the last humans alive, just as you did. Each one has developed their own technologies and tactics. Together you represent the largest intelligence network in known space. Torres stood and walked to a tactical display showing the entire galaxy. Red zones marked Kythera territory, while small blue dots showed the locations of human refugee populations and remnant fleets. The Kythera Dominion controls approximately 38% of the galaxy, he said. They have enslaved or destroyed hundreds of species. They rule through fear and brutality. Convinced that they are the ultimate form of life, they have grown arrogant and complacent. He touched a control and the display changed to show Earth's hidden forces. The blue dots spread like a spider web through Kythera space, each one representing ships and people ready to strike. But they made one critical mistake, Torres continued. They let humanity survive. They thought they had broken us, but instead they gave us the greatest gift possible, a reason to become stronger than we ever imagined. Chen studied the display, beginning to understand the scope of what Earth had planned. This is Operation Lazarus? A coordinated strike against the entire Dominion? Operation Lazarus is just the beginning, Torres said. We're not just going to defeat the Kythera, Admiral. We're going to make sure they never threaten anyone again. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. He handed her a data pad containing fleet positions and attack plans. The scope of the operation was staggering. Simultaneous strikes against hundreds of targets throughout Kythera space, coordinated by a network of human forces that the Dominion had no idea existed. Your remnant fleet will spearhead the assault on Sector 7, Torres said. Your ships are perfect for hit-and-run operations in enemy territory. You'll work with local resistance groups to free human refugees and destabilize Kythera supply lines. Chen looked at the datapad, then back at Torres. When do we begin? In 72 hours. By the time the Kythera realize what's happening, it will be too late to stop us. The galaxy is about to learn that reports of humanity's death have been greatly exaggerated. As Chen prepared to return to her ship, Torres walked with her to the docking bay. Admiral, there's one more thing you should know. The Kythera have been planning something they call the final cleansing. They want to eliminate all remaining traces of humanity from the galaxy. They're moving their reserve fleets into position for a massive operation. Let them come, Chen said grimly. It's time the galaxy learned what 73 years of human anger looks like when it's finally set free. Across the galaxy, humanity struck at once. In 17 different sectors, human fleets that were supposed to be extinct appeared from nowhere and attacked Kythera positions with weapons that should not have existed. The coordinated assault began exactly 73 years, 4 months, and 16 days after the Great Exodus. Admiral Chen led her remnant fleet against the Kythera trophy world of Xerion Prime. The planet was one of the Dominion's greatest prizes, a former human colony world that they had converted into a museum of their victory over humanity. Kythera visitors came from across the galaxy to see the monuments built from human bones and the preserved ruins of human cities. All ships begin the attack, Chen ordered from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn. Remember, we are not here to destroy cities or kill civilians. We are here to send a message. The 47 ships of the remnant fleet decloaked around Xerion Prime simultaneously. The planet's Kythera defenders had only minutes to react before human weapons began raining down on their military installations. But the humans were precise in their targeting. They destroyed weapon platforms and communication arrays while leaving the civilian areas untouched. As the orbital defenses crumbled, Chen opened a communication channel to every receiver on the planet. Her message was broadcast in both human and Kythera languages, ensuring that everyone would understand. People of Xerion Prime, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Remnant Fleet. We have returned to reclaim what was stolen from us. To the Kythera forces on this world, you have exactly 1 hour to evacuate. To the human refugees still living here, your long exile is over. Earth remembers her children. The response was immediate chaos. Kythera military commanders scrambled to organize a defense while civilian authorities tried to evacuate their populations. On the surface, human refugees who had lived as slaves for decades emerged from hiding places to stare up at the sky in disbelief. But Chen's fleet was not alone. As they finished destroying the orbital defenses, more human ships appeared. These were vessels from the hidden Earth fleet, larger and more advanced than anything the remnant forces possessed. They moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting between dimensions to avoid enemy weapons. "Admiral Chen," came a transmission from the lead Earth ship. "This is Commander Sarah Kim of the EFS Retribution. We're here to provide support and to help evacuate the human population." Chen watched as the Earth ships deployed thousands of small craft that descended to the planet's surface. They were not coming to conquer or destroy. They were coming to rescue people who had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. On other worlds throughout Kythera space, similar scenes were playing out. Human fleets appeared at every major Kythera trophy world, systematically dismantling the monuments to Dominion victory while broadcasting the same message. Humanity has returned. The Kythera leadership was in panic. Supreme War Hierarch Thakmor stood in his command center on the Dominion capital world, staring at reports that seemed impossible. 17 separate human fleets operating simultaneously across half the galaxy. Weapons that could phase through shields. Ships that appeared and disappeared without warning. "How many humans are there?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. We don't know, Supreme Leader. Our estimates suggested maybe a few thousand survivors in scattered refugee groups. But these fleets represent hundreds of thousands of personnel, possibly millions." Thakmor's forearms trembled with rage.
"Find out where they came from."
"Find their base. I want every ship in the Dominion Navy hunting these vermin." But the Kythera were discovering that finding the human fleets was almost impossible. The ships seemed to exist partially outside normal space, appearing only long enough to strike before vanishing again. Their weapons left no energy signatures that could be tracked. Their communications could not be intercepted. On Xerion Prime, the evacuation of human refugees was proceeding rapidly. Families that had been separated for decades were reunited aboard the rescue ships. Children who had never known freedom were seeing their first human soldiers, their first taste of hope. An old woman named Maria Santos, who had survived the original Kythera invasion as a child, grabbed Commander Kim's hand as she was helped aboard a rescue shuttle. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Is Earth really still alive?" "Very much alive," Kim assured her. "And waiting for you to come home." The old woman began to cry. She had spent 70 years believing that humanity was finished, that the Kythera had won completely. Now she was being told that it had all been a lie, that her people had been fighting back all along. As the last human refugees were evacuated from Xerion Prime, Chen prepared to deliver the final part of her message. She had her ships target the massive monument at the planet's capital city, a twisted spire made from human skulls that celebrated the Kythera victory over Earth. "This monument has stood for 73 years, she broadcast to the watching galaxy. "It was built to show the universe that humanity could be defeated. Today we show the universe that it was wrong." The monument vanished in a column of fire that could be seen from orbit. In its place, the human ships projected a holographic message in letters a kilometer high. "We remember. We return. We never surrender." The same scene was repeated on 17 worlds across Kythera space. Every trophy of Dominion victory was destroyed. Every human monument was restored. And everywhere they went, the human fleets left the same message behind. But the liberation of the trophy worlds was only the beginning. As reports poured into Kythera command centers, it became clear that humanity was not just mounting random attacks. They were systematically destroying the infrastructure that held the Dominion together. Communication relays were vaporized. Supply depots were emptied and their contents distributed to enslaved populations. Trade routes were disrupted by human ships that appeared without warning, destroyed Kythera convoys, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Most disturbing of all, other species throughout the galaxy were beginning to rebel. The Veltar, who had been enslaved for 3 centuries, rose up on their homeworld when human ships provided them with weapons. The Zephyrians, whose cities had been burned by Kythera forces, began attacking Dominion outposts with equipment that could only have come from human sources. "They're coordinating with every species that has a grudge against us," reported General Vextar to Supreme War Hierarch Thakmor. "The humans aren't just attacking our military. They're organizing a galaxy-wide rebellion." Thakmor stared at the strategic display showing red warning icons spreading across Dominion space like a virus. In 3 days, the humans had done more damage to the Kythera Empire than any enemy in the Dominion's history. Impossible, he growled. Humans are weak. They're emotional. They cannot plan on this scale. But the evidence was undeniable. The human attacks were too coordinated, too precise, too perfectly timed to be the work of scattered refugee groups. This was the result of decades of planning by an intelligence that understood the Kythera better than they understood themselves. Supreme Leader, said his chief strategist, we must consider the possibility that the initial invasion of Earth was not as successful as we believed. Takmor turned on the smaller alien with fury in all four of his eyes. Are you suggesting that we failed to conquer one primitive world? I'm suggesting that maybe we conquered what they wanted us to conquer, the strategist replied carefully. If Earth still exists, if humanity has been planning this for 73 years. The Supreme War Hierarch was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated the fleet-wide communication system, sending his message to every Kythera ship in the galaxy. All forces, this is Supreme War Hierarch Takmor. The humans have revealed themselves. They seek to undo everything we have built. This cannot be permitted. I am authorizing the use of our complete reserve fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every warrior in the Dominion Navy is to converge on the Sol system. We will finish what we started 73 years ago. We will make sure that this time, humanity dies completely. The largest fleet in Kythera history began to move toward Earth's last known position. Over 2,000 warships commanded by the finest officers in the Dominion, armed with weapons capable of sterilizing entire worlds. They had no idea that humanity was waiting for them. The largest fleet in Kythera history moved through space like a storm of death. Over 2,000 warships, each one capable of destroying cities, converged on the coordinates where Earth was supposed to be. Supreme War Hierarch Takmor commanded from his flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon that carried enough firepower to crack planets. At last, he said to his officers, we will finish the humans properly. This time there will be no survivors, no refugees, no exiles. Every last human will die, and the galaxy will know that the Kythera Dominion cannot be challenged. When they arrived at the Sol system, the Kythera found exactly what they expected, a small defensive fleet of about 50 human ships guarding the approach to Earth. The ships looked advanced, but were greatly outnumbered. To Takmor it looked like humanity's final desperate stand. Pitiful, he sneered. Is this all they can manage after 73 years of hiding? Begin the attack. Show no mercy. The Kythera fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered half the galaxy, plasma cannons that could melt steel, missile systems that could track targets across star systems, energy beams that could punch through any known armor. The space around the human defensive fleet lit up with enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. But the human ships moved like nothing the Kythera had ever seen. They slipped between dimensions, phasing through solid matter, appearing and disappearing faster than the eye could follow. Their own weapons struck back with precision that seemed impossible, each shot finding weak points in Kythera armor that their computers said should not exist. Even so, 50 ships could not hope to defeat 2,000. One by one, the human vessels began to fall. Their shields collapsed under the massive bombardment. Their hulls cracked and burned. Warning systems screamed as human crews died defending their home. They fight well, admitted General Vextar, but they cannot win. This is the end of humanity. Takmor watched the battle with satisfaction. The humans were brave, he had to admit that. But bravery meant nothing against superior numbers and firepower. Soon the last human ship would be destroyed, and then his fleet would turn Earth itself into cosmic dust. That was when the defenders sent a message on all frequencies. It was Admiral Chen's voice coming from her damaged flagship as it spun helplessly through space. Earth Fleet Command, this is Admiral Chen. We can't hold them much longer. If you have any surprises left, now would be a good time to use them. The response came from Earth itself, broadcast on every communication channel in the system. It was Fleet Admiral Torres, and he sounded almost amused. Admiral Chen, this is Earth Fleet Command. Thank you for bringing our guests exactly where we wanted them. All ships drop the cloak. Let's show the Kythera what humanity has been building for the last 73 years. The space around Earth began to change. Reality twisted and bent as the planet's massive cloaking system shut down. What had appeared to be empty space filled with ships, hundreds and hundreds of human vessels that materialized from nothing. But these were not the small, elegant ships of the defensive fleet. These were monsters, Dreadnoughts the size of cities covered in weapons that looked like they belonged in nightmares. Each one was larger than a Kythera flagship. Each one radiated power that made the space around it bend and warp. The Kythera fleet found itself surrounded by over 500 human capital ships, with more appearing every second as the full extent of Earth's hidden navy revealed itself. The trap had been perfectly laid. "Impossible," whispered Thakmor. "They cannot have built so many ships. Where were they hiding them?" His answer came as the Earth ships began to move. They existed partially outside normal space, stored in dimensional pockets that no Kythera sensor could detect. Now they emerged into reality like demons coming from hell, their weapons charging with energy that made nearby stars seem dim. Fleet Admiral Torres opened a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets. His voice was calm and cold, the voice of a man who had spent 73 years planning this moment. "Supreme War Hierarch Thakmor, this is Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres of Earth Fleet Command. 73 years ago, your people came to our world believing you could crush us. You thought you had succeeded. You were wrong. The Earth ships opened fire. But these were not the weapons the Kythera remembered from their first war with humanity. These were weapons built by a species that had spent 7 decades learning to hate, designed by scientists who understood that sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become something even worse. Plasma cannons that fired rounds of compressed star matter punched through Kythera shields like they were made of paper. Missiles that could phase through solid matter detonated inside enemy ships, tearing them apart from within. Energy beams that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously struck targets that thought they were safely hidden. The first wave of Kythera ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, but completely unmade at the molecular level. The second wave tried to retreat, but found that human ships had appeared behind them, cutting off any escape route.
This is impossible!
Thakmor screamed into his communicator. "No species can build weapons like this. It violates every law of physics." Torres' reply came back immediately. "The laws of physics are more like suggestions when you've had 73 years to figure out how to break them. You wanted to finish what you started, Hierarch, we agree. Let's finish this." The battle became a massacre. Kythera ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were torn apart like toys. Their weapons, which had destroyed entire civilizations, barely scratched the hulls of the human dreadnoughts. Their shields, which had deflected the most powerful attacks in known space, collapsed under the first human salvo. But the humans were not just destroying the Kythera fleet. They were making a statement. Each enemy ship was disabled and boarded rather than destroyed outright. Kythera crew members found themselves facing human soldiers wearing armor that looked like it had been forged from nightmares. "Surrender," the humans told them, "and you will be treated with more mercy than you ever showed our people." Some Kythera chose to fight and died quickly. Others surrendered and found themselves prisoners of a species they had believed to be extinct. They were processed efficiently, cataloged, and prepared for transport to prison worlds where they would serve the same sentences they had imposed on others. As the last Kythera resistance collapsed, Supreme War Hierarch Thakmor found his flagship surrounded by a dozen human dreadnoughts. His weapons were offline, his shields were down, and his crew was dead or unconscious. He sat alone on his bridge, staring at the communication screen as Fleet Admiral Torres appeared. "Hierarch," Torres said politely, "you are now a prisoner of Earth Fleet Command. You will be transported to a secure facility where you will stand trial for crimes against humanity and about 200 other species." "This cannot be happening," Thakmor whispered. "The Kythera are the ultimate evolution of life. We are the perfect warriors. We cannot be defeated by weak, emotional humans." Torres smiled coldly. "That's where you made your mistake. You thought emotion made us weak. You were wrong. Emotion makes us dangerous. Love for our families, loyalty to our friends, and hatred for those who hurt them. For 73 years we have lived with the knowledge of what you did to our people. That hatred has made us stronger than you ever imagined possible." As Thakmor was taken into custody, Torres activated the galaxy-wide communication system. His message reached every world, every species, every corner of known space. "Citizens of the galaxy, this is Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres of the Earth Fleet. Today the Kythera Dominion has fallen. Their fleets are destroyed, their leaders are prisoners, their empire is finished. Let it be known throughout the stars that humanity has returned." He paused, looking out at the wreckage of the greatest fleet the Kythera had ever assembled. We remember every world you burned, every life you stole, every moment you believed us broken. We are humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we never, ever stay down. The galaxy watched as human ships appeared in every system once controlled by the Cathara, but they did not come as conquerors. They came as liberators, freeing enslaved populations and offering aid to species that had suffered under Dominion rule. The age of Cathara dominion was over. The age of humanity had begun. And across the stars, every species learned the lesson that the Cathara had forgotten. Never underestimate the species that climbed out of caves to touch the stars. Because when humanity falls, it doesn't stay down. It gets back up angrier, smarter, and more dangerous than before. The humans had kept their promise. The Cathara would regret crossing humanity for the rest of their very long lives.